Folks, if you're married, you have lost the right to be selfish. You must turn your very being over to the hands of another. In fact, speaking very plainly, being driven sexually, we need to understand this. Other than sickness or disease, there's only really one acceptable reason for withholding your body from your spouse, and that is when the two of you come together and make a decision, both of you, that for a short time, emphasize short, for a short time, you say, you know what, we're not going to be one so that we can spend the next 4 days, 8 days, 2 weeks in fasting and in prayer. We are going to give up something very precious and special so that we can look for the heart and the passion and the purpose of God in our lives. All right? So, other than sickness or disease, the only reason you should be withholding yourself from one another is when the two of you together, for a period of time, short, I might add, you agree that it's for fasting and prayer. But listen, Paul comes in with a great recommendation. Very quickly he says, as soon as the time of fasting and prayer is over, though, you've got to come together to be as one so that you can avoid the power of sexual temptation. Because can't you just imagine the volume of the laughter that Satan would have if he could get you to mess up your commitment to your husband or to your wife because you fasted and prayed? Because you said no to one another for this long period of time and failed to come back together, that in the middle of your fasting and prayer your eyes began to wander and your lust began to grow? How would Satan revel in that? We can't allow that to happen. And so you make the time short, and when it's over, you come together and you celebrate God's goodness, His mercy, and the reality that He spoke to your heart in this time of fasting and prayer. We have to understand this kind of stuff. We have to understand this kind of stuff. Now, for married folks, divorce among believers is not supposed to be an option. Problem is, the church, right now, if it's not just dead on equal, it's even greater than the divorce rate in the culture. Now, here's why I say our culture, our society is just as messed up and immoral as the Corinthian society. Now, the Corinthian society, they would easily have had as many as 20 marriages and divorces. Can you imagine someone marrying and divorcing 20 times, and yet that might have been commonplace in this day? Talk about an immoral society. Talk about a society that does not understand what commitment is all about. But we must understand that. We must live differently. For Christians, divorce is supposed to be not an option. However, for those who are unequally yoked. Now let me define unequally yoked. A Christian with a non-Christian. A believer with a non-believer. A follower after Jesus with someone who refuses to follow after Jesus. If that is the label of your marriage, Paul says, only if the non-believing, non-following, non-Christian wants to leave is divorce an option. Only when the non-believer walks away does divorce happen. But then Paul says, if he wants to go, let him go. Because he wants you to live in peace. Because he wants you to live in peace. That's kind of tough. That's kind of tough. But that means if you're the believer, you don't leave. You don't leave. You work it out. You work it out. And I got to tell you, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But that is what you have, that's the bed you have made, so to speak. So now you're lying in it. Deal with it. Learn how to deal with it. Who knows? Maybe, just maybe, you will be the one who leads your husband or your wife to Jesus Christ. Having said that, let me be real frank and real honest. Dating is not a wise witnessing tool. Don't say, well, you know what, I think he's really cute. He doesn't believe in Jesus, but if he dates me, he will. Don't be so naive. Guys, don't think that you're going to convince a girl just because of your magnetic personality. I mean, come on. Who do we think we are? And by the way, if dating is not a powerful witnessing tool, marriage stinks as one. it is far more likely across the board for a believer to live like an unbeliever far before a non-believer is going to start to live like a believer. The believer is far more likely to be pulled down to the level of the non-believer than the non-believer is to be pulled up. Be careful about being unequally yoked. Marriage. There's so much more to say, but my time is about up. So we go down to those who are single. Again, single is second only because S follows M. One is not more valuable than the other. Both are gifts from God. And Paul wishes everyone could have this gift, the gift of singleness. He wishes everyone could live in his shoes, because Paul was so single-mindedly pursuing God, so passionate about pursuing God that he wanted everyone to experience life the way he was experiencing it. But the downside of being single is that means you've got to stay celibate. In the same way that being married means one guy, one gal, monogamous forever, being single means being celibate forever. Anything outside of celibacy is sin. And in the same way, I kind of ranted and raved a little bit about being engaged outside of marriage. Anything beyond the one guy, one gal until death do us part is wrong. So, any guy or any gal, if you're single, is wrong. Is wrong. Is sin. And we cannot, as the Church of Jesus Christ, toy around with sin any longer. It is time that we take this very, very seriously. Single means celibate. And we just have to know that going into this reality of our lives. A single person, however, can, with singleness of mind, singleness of passion, singleness of purpose, pursue God. That's how Paul lived, and he desired that everyone could know his life. But a single person who is burning with passion for anyone other than God is probably not gifted with singleness and probably ought to consider pursuing marriage. Paul says it is better to marry than to burn with passion and to be crippled by lust. Okay? And so if you're finding yourself being crippled by lust, start contemplating whether or not you have the gift of singleness. Okay? But other than that, let me say this. Make sure you are really on target in your relationship with God. I mean, sin has nothing to do with your giftedness. And if you're just toying with sin, you're messing your own life up. But if you are doing everything you can to pursue God first and foremost, and you're still burning with passion for someone else, you probably don't have the gift for singleness. A single person, however, we got to understand this, is not yoked with the same responsibilities that a married person carries at all times. A married person carries certain responsibilities always. Whether Carrie is not here today, but I am still responsible for her. I still am concerned about her. I still worry about her. I still am passionate about her. And whether she is with me here or only in spirit, okay? I am still committed to her. I am married. That is always with me. I always carry that level of responsibility. Someone who is not married, someone who is single, doesn't carry those responsibilities, is not weighted down with that kind of concern. All right? And so there are benefits in that freedom. There are benefits in that freedom. A single person is not yoked with the same levels of responsibility that a married person carries at all times.